Hey, it's Shaves, and welcome to another edition of Anitube Digest, where we go over the best and not so best anime YouTube videos that came out this week, in this case, from October 19th to October 25th. I only got one video for you today that I thought was not good, and even that I almost thought was going to be decent, and then it didn't work. It is a BennettTheSage video. Of course, I gave him a decent one time, or I think I gave him the best videos, because, his Satana video was really good, and it was showing, growth. So, this is about Hacksign, the origins of Isekai, and he makes this so, the reason I thought this was almost not going to be, not good, I actually thought it was going to be okay, is that for a lot of the video, he really handles it with a fair deal of tact, and was like, this is what my intention was in making this video, where I was like, oh, yeah, Doc Hacksign's one of the first, bear starters of Isekai and all that stuff. He just kind of forgets that and just kind of falls back onto just shitting on it, kind of halfway through. But he made this, introduction where it was just this is a starter of Isekai, this is kind of its background, and very, very, neutral opinion about it. Just giving the history and stuff and describing it, right? And then really describing what the visuals are like and kind of what this series is going for and why it might not necessarily be a reflection on the kind of isekai we know about today. And ironically enough, there's another video that I'll be talking about that I think gets a closer idea of why that is. It actually answers his fucking quandary. But he just ends up getting wrapped up at how much he hated the show. I guess in a way, I guess hate is not the right word, but didn't like it. So this was really emblematic of what I just don't like about his videos, and he's really the real prime example of this kind of pessimism and overcritical nature in a lot of YouTube and anime YouTube today. And he's still one of the bastions of it, really, and the way he talks about Perfect Blue and how much he doesn't like that. I think it's Perfect Blue he doesn't like. But then also Metropolis, he has a really negative review. Evangelion, he really hates that show. And, of course, all the countless OVAs that have never gotten any recognition or visibility on YouTube than his review of them. Oftentimes painting them in very bad lights. And it really clicked with me, I think, of why I really don't like it, is that he does substantiate his points, fair enough, but there's something about it that he kind of weaves and manipulates the show in a way through using out of context and not giving you only giving you very specific details that he zeroes in on. That is and he's basically crafting a narrative of why the show sucks. I know people that love this show, or at least like it, or didn't find a problem with it as he has. And so that tells me that there's got to be something about this that people did resonate with or did think did work, and what he's saying, oh, this didn't work and this didn't work, and then it was well, no, they think it does. A lot of these people, this isn't a universally panned show or anything, that. So there's got to be some nuance to this and some contentious perspectives, and so there's some differences here. There's just something about it that I'm okay, you're manipulating this in a way that it substantiates your argument. And you know what? Look, that's probably just YouTube in general. That's probably all of us, even those of us who are making positive takes, and showing the, and why we like the thing, and maybe that's just the artifice of YouTube and stuff. Sure. But when it's being used in such a detrimental, so at the end of the video, he's only watch this show for the historical value, and you won't get anything much else out of it. He straight up says that. That is his conclusion. I don't agree with. I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's very disingenuous, and you should. I don't think anyone should say that about any show. That you should only watch it because of this. Otherwise, don't watch it. And obviously, he can't stop anyone from doing it anyway. But it certainly discourages them. It certainly, because people have a priority list of oh, I want to watch this show. And I wanted to watch Doc Sign at some point, but this sort of illustration, this light, if I was more of a person that listens to him or agrees with much of his opinions, if I was a fan, I would take his word for it, and my priority of ever watching the show myself plummets or just goes away entirely. And low-key, I think that's kind of like the whole gatekeeping thing, which is funny because that's another video that I think is trying to allude to that. The idea of discouraging others from watching it. They can't stop them, but they sure as hell can deflate the tires a good deal. And for those people that love this show, which I know there are, that sucks, you know. And even if you don't have that opinion about Doc Sign, imagine your favorite show, or imagine one of your favorite movies or something. Like if you're a Metropolis fan, he discourages people from watching that movie. If you're a Grave of the Fireflies fan and you took a lot from that film, if you thought it was an emotionally resonant film, he takes a giant dump on it and tries to convince lots of people that it's not worth its salt, or it's deeply problematic or something, whatever he's, you know. And I don't like that. I personally, the galvanization of that is gatekeeping to me. When I was talking about his Utena video, he was having like velvet gloves on with this thing and really taking it with some nuance and like, I don't understand this, but I'm not going to try to bother it, I guess, irritate it. And he does it with this show for half of it. And I think it's about where he starts talking about spoilers. There's a point where he's just like, this show is not good. Flat out says it. And it's from there that he starts using verbiage of like, and basically uses these big swaths and big buzzwords or hyperbole and boiling things down into it's listless. It's this in very sharp adjectives that are painting it in a very negative light and just completely demolishes it. And it's fine to have the frustrations and to communicate. I like people communicating their personal experiences with the show, but he starts the video as this and has the title as like, this is what I was intending to do when reviewing this show. And then I actually watched it. Or because he had rewatched it, but it was like 15 years or something since he had seen it. And that perspective is fine. But like, when you're like, I was anticipating to make a video like this, but I ended up just shitting on the show instead. And don't actually have anything to say about the prompt I was doing. If that happens to any of you, don't make the video. I would galvanize you to discourage you from making something like that, because I don't think it's additive. I don't think it's healthy for you as a creator to make something like that, to force yourself into making that. It's fine. It's good that he was transparent about that intent. But I don't think it was in service of something. I think it was in disservice of a show that a lot of people do respect and appreciate. I had an idea for an Utena video that was comparing the movie to the TV series and how much I loved the movie. It's one of my favorite movies, it is. And just taking a giant dump on the show because I really didn't like it. It's not awful for me. It's not like a bad, but I was irritated for much of the run of like, what is it doing? And like not liking its choices. And, you know, I wanted to express those, but making that sort of video, I think, would be very detrimental to me as a creator. Not additive, because who the fuck is going to listen to it, right? The people, Utena fans are not going to like it, let alone agree with it, right? And people who haven't watched Utena, that might dissuade them from watching the show, which I don't want to do, because I think it's a very formative show. As Bennett makes an argument for Doc Sign, where he thinks it's an informative, you know, important show in the history of this whatever. But I can't just say that it's influential. No, you should still watch it. I even make like a self-deprecating joke in that script where it's like, don't listen to me. And then it's like, what am I watching the video for? What are you doing? You know, so I probably not going to make that video. maybe if I find a better outlet or a better way to go about it, while handling my perspective with Utena with some tact, then I'll consider it. But I'm not going to make that video because it would be a bad experience. It would not be a good video. I'm not making it not good. Not like any of these folks that I thought their videos were decent. All right, just okay. Mr. Burger, Chapter 2. I said I would talk about every episode, and I will. This was the chapter that he starts doing some significantly creepy stuff. The first chapter was mostly set up, and now he really started to like have some disturbing imagery and some disturbing scenes, and nothing too overtly gross, I don't think. But it was steadily. I liked that he very steadily increased the factor, and then especially this one part where he omits what the character sees, and it's like, that's not a cat. And then he goes through the whole process of the character being frightened by that, running out of the house and starting the car and going through the process while leaving the reader in suspense of what he actually saw. And then he goes to write it in like a sketch thing, like the character draws it to try to picture it, and it's like, and then he starts to describe it very slowly, and then the end of the chapter was, it was a fucking insect. And then it's like, it was awesome. The prose is really cool. I really liked where the story is going. Not that I I'm bonded with the characters or anything like that, but I don't think that's really what these sort of horror things are about. But that's okay. So I'm enjoying it so far. But this is another video where I really picked up my phone and started scrolling through Twitter as I was watching the video. It really wasn't, because it wasn't visually all that engaging. In fact, I would, obviously I think the novelty wears off. Not that it was bad, because again, I think it's very inventive and I like the idea a lot. But when it's edited pretty much identically to Chapter 1, I should mention also, there's some music cues, and he starts bringing some atmospheric music in. It was really good choices. The way he edits, and it's all the one voice. He doesn't bring other voices in. It's just his voice. And you can tell there's a very clear voice of the main perspective character, and him as a narrator, and him as other characters. Even like some female characters, he doesn't try to put on like a female voice or anything. He really just... But you get that impression, like it's a very initial impression, not over. He doesn't try too hard, but it's enough where it's very clearly other things, and it's nice. I really enjoyed the actual experience and the audio and what the meat of the actual video is. I just think at this point you're doing nothing with the visuals. That could just be basically a black screen at this point, and it's like, oh man, I wish it was a video, And again, I don't think the actual idea of the video, like the concept, is bad. But there just needs to be more to it. And especially when you're using the same thing and nothing is changed or is anything extra is given. At least I couldn't tell. The novelty wore off. So that's not like an overall negative or anything. It's just like I'm just wishing for more, I guess. But if that means, and you're putting more effort into the audio, that's where your effort's going to be, and that's totally fine. So I'm just expressing my enjoyment of the second chapter. I hope you guys catch up to it. Or if you're following with me, what do you think of it so far? Or you could just tell Baron, I guess. You just put it in his comments. Why would you just I like the video too? And it's like, I'm just stealing views at this point. Okay. He almost didn't make this week's digest, but he uploaded this 11-something p.m. last night. Just in time. Official anime autism levels explained. Digibro. I wrote notes. I wrote some notes. So he has created this concept of how autistic a certain fan can be, and it's a way to explain or clarify why people are attracted or fans of certain types of media. And there's a lot more nuance to this, but I think the thing I want to get out of the way right now is I'm not sure if calling it autism or calling the metric or the whole idea based on autism was a good idea. There are people that are scientists and psychologists that this is their entire job profession, and you don't cite intentionally, might I add, you don't cite any studies or definitions of autism, or try to. The one thing you mention is like autistic people don't like loud noises very much, and I feel like that was kind of meant as a stereotype, because I don't really think all of them. It's certainly a common trait, but and I don't remember the context in which he says this quote, but it's stuff like that, and it's like kind of making assumptions of autistic people, and it kind of came off as a bit tone deaf to me. Otherwise, besides actually trying to connect this to a real life thing that doesn't make an attempt to really justify why he's labeling all of this as autism or autistic. Beyond that, I really like this idea. It's so hard to kind of quantify, but basically like database is what his whole thing is, database. Levels of entry of certain media that is easy to get into versus having kind of a certain way to go about thinking and enjoying something. That makes it gradually gets more and more abstract. So he basically categorizes it into 7 levels. First being the weakest, and he actually gives like a 0.5 for even weaker. He makes a claim. First of all, the first claim he makes in this video is that anime is inherently autistic, and if you enjoy it, you might be inherently autistic. And that's already a controversial. Like, whoa, dude. Yeah, go. Okay, just gonna label literally all of us watching this video. Gotcha. And I think it's important to say that he doesn't consider this a negative. I think he is embracing the idea that autism is a new normal, and it's not being stigmatized. It shouldn't be stigmatized. It shouldn't be like, we need to prevent our kids from getting more autistic. It should be like we need to embrace it and learn what it can provide, and like what it is, you know? But then again, it's like, this is an autism dude. I'm not going to pretend to know what autism means. I really don't. But like, you know, I actually I've had a conversation with my friends with like, I can't tell if a person has those tendencies. I'm just not good at telling that. I'm very dense in that way. But anyway, level 0.5 is shows like Death Note and FMA. Level 1 is like One Punch Man, One Piece, Hunter x Hunter, things, and Marvel movies. He makes also, I like that it was kind of focused on anime, but he does expand this to other mediums, even like Magic the Gathering and stuff like that. So, man, he does so much better explaining this than I do. Jeez Louise. So like the level 1s is stuff that normies basically can get into. That is very easy to digest as people that like are taking something for the first time. So it's a lot of gateway shows. That's what we kind of call as like, you know, entry level stuff, because they have a lack of things to keep track of, and data collection. Basically, shows that have a lot of characters. There's a lot to this. I'm sorry. Something I liked was that he does make the point that all of these shows are not permanently in any one of these categories. But he's like, you know, if you're enjoying one show, like Dragon Ball, for example, you can watch that show as a level 1 and enjoy it because of the whole fights and everything like that. But the minute you start going into power systems and power levels and the ideas of who can beat who, which admittedly is a lot of the DBZ fandom, that's where he says that it can start going down on the charts, and you're more of like a level 3 or somewhere around there, where you're starting to like collect these as like and going into more of the headcanon. He talks a lot about fan fiction. There's just so much to it's a 40-minute video, and most of it is a vlog. Just him talking to a camera. Even at one point, accidentally, I hate to be nitpicky, but he did accidentally leave in one little gaffe of like him restarting a sentence and stuff, and didn't have like a clear, maybe just because in that edit, he didn't have a clear sentence to say, and he didn't want to go re-record it. But like little stuff like that, it's just like, this is a theory he's thought about for a while, and he actually hesitated on making a visual for it because there was a lot that had to go into it, and didn't have the time for it. And he is looking for artists or other people who are good at making these kind of charts to sort of lay out a very clear idea of this spectrum. So like level 1 is like the entry level stuff, and then what really illustrated it to me was that level 4 is stuff like the Fate franchise or Index or visual novels, stuff that has so much to keep track of, and they might be hard to parse initially, because you have to learn so many characters and so many names, and they expect you to be immersed in this world like right away. And then he's like 6 and 7 is like starting to kind of lose grips on like concrete ideas. Like Chris Chan is level 6. Anyone that's very deeply into Sonic, all the Sonic OCs, and he doesn't make this point, but I got the feeling like, does My Little Pony count in this instance? It ends up not being about the content itself, but more so the idea of it, and taking those aesthetics and recycling them over and over and over again, and just kind of immersing yourself in that world. And he mentions there's 7 levels total, and the only example he pulls to describe level 7 is Thomas the Tank Engine. I guess if you're like a deep Thomas the Tank Engine fan. So I don't really know what he's talking about there. He barely mentions it. It's a kind of a one-off comment, and then he doesn't really talk. He mostly starts giving more nuance and like trying to give examples that are between levels 2 and 3, and how shows from level 2 can be pulled into a level 3 based on how deep you go into it. Explaining where he's at, where he's more of like a 3 or a 3 point, kind of in between 3 and 4. And so he's starting to build a little more nuance to that. But I think when it gets to around 5, 6, 7, it ends up being simplistic to very underdeveloped in this theory of his. But it was fun to listen to as someone who's crafting a concept, and he does this a lot. I would say I feel like I've seen him try to do stuff like this and communicate these ideas or perspectives. But this is the first time, and he posted it on his main channel, that really felt like trying to come to a fully fleshed idea. I don't think it's fully there. I feel like it deserved a lot more examples that I wish he could have pulled. And it's overall not a very polished presentation. So that's why it's indecent. Also, the whole autistic thing, I don't know if that was a good choice, man. I feel like most people are going to just look at that idea, that word, and completely dismiss what you're trying to say. And I think there's something to it with what you're saying here. It's like people who like increasingly complex things, and I don't know, there's something interesting about it. If not, some people could very much disagree with it or think it's bogus or whatever, but I don't know. I think it was cool to listen to. So I'm putting in decent. Don't call it autism though. What are you doing? All right, enough for another kind of controversial video that he was expecting me to review anyway. WatTheWut came out with a video called Gatekeeping is Good, or is it? So I did kind of see the beef, or not beef, it's not beef, I'm sorry to call it beef, discussion you have that WatTheWut had with Mr. Cynical, and Mr. Cynical getting very mad that like the definition he has for gatekeeping is wrong or otherwise doesn't exist. Like he makes the whole point that like you physically can't stop someone from watching a show, and he's right. And WatTheWut actually mentions that in the video, where he's like, yeah, you can't stop anyone from doing that, but you can stop them from participating in the conversation. So like when a person says some dumb shit and they expect to be taken seriously, you're not going to listen to them. And then that often damages their credibility as someone who's as a participant in the discussion. That's mostly what WatTheWut's talking about, as like people can consume whatever they want. That's different from gatekeeping in the community and being an anime fan. And WatTheWut pulls mostly examples from Twitter of people expressing their ideas and how it's a lot of it is misinformation or just a poor understanding of a concept or an idea, like making the argument that Hero Academia is a brilliant, like a new, like never been told before series when Naruto fans have seen Naruto. I'm happy he made this video a lot because it is a very hot button topic and something that I think he does a pretty good job at really tackling and identifying the right way to go about it and not dismissing one way or the other. He's more like gatekeeping is for, you know, keeping the conversation relevant and with truth. For at least this is the interpretation I kind of got out of it, where it was like gatekeeping should be done with people who are trying to steer the conversation into something, or twist it into in a way that that is manipulative or has misinformation or is uninformed. And instead, people are using it as a way of like, you have to see this many anime to be a fan, and WatTheWut really dismantles that idea. It's like, that's so stupid, because like some of us can't name 15 Dragon Ball characters, but we've seen more anime than the person making that argument. Like me! And how like, even tackling that argument of like, I'm not an anime fan, I'm an anime fan, you're not an anime fan. And kind of twisting it, it's like, this is stupid. You could be an anime fan. This is so, but like, don't try to make the argument that the big three is now these other three shows. Like, the big three is these three for the reasons of just being the highest grossing manga at the time. That's why they were called that. But we're not trying to find a big three of the 2010s or anything like that. I really like where he's going with that. But I felt like a lot of the video is kind of clunky, kind of running into the woods off a time, or kind of off the path a couple times. Because it's very easy with this topic to insert your own opinion and being like, people think that a shonen demographic is a demographic, is a genre, not a demographic. And he's like, what? That's real. I'm sure you're watching this right now. You're like, yeah, but I'm right, though. I have a personal disagreement on very adamantly calling them demographics when they can be used in and the video itself, the way it was edited, a lot of the time you're saying one thing and you're showing a tweet. So I'm trying to read the tweet that you're referencing, but also listen to you. And it's kind of hard to do both. And I don't want to pause the video. Like, I don't think a video should be paused, require pausing to be coherent, you know? And so I end up not quite being able to read the tweet because I'm trying to listen to you, but not quite be able to pay attention to what you're saying because I'm trying to read because I'm distracted by the tweet. So then that entire segment, I just blur out and I'm like, what did he say? What? That's just me, and maybe I'm just a poor watcher. I guess I can't watch Monogatari. But it felt very chaotic and not hard to watch. But not in a like, this is tough. Oh, like, it's so cringy. Not like that kind of hard to watch, but it was just like, it's hard to listen and follow what you're saying and be convinced with your argument. And I agree with your argument pretty much with what I did glean from it. What I think I gleaned from it, I guess. I agree, and I'm happy you made it. That's why it's indecent. There's elements to it that I didn't fully get it, or you were kind of making some references or jokes that only you got or only your friends might get. I don't know. There's things that you would find humor in. That's what all of us do too, is like we put things in our videos that we think are funny and that it might not be funny to other people. And that happens, and I shouldn't really blame you for that or anything like that. But that's just my perspective and then what I'm taking out of the video. I'm happy you made it. And I enjoyed it, but there was things about it that are kind of rocky for me, and I can't help but, and I don't want to like lie to you and be like, I thought it was good. Please don't harass me on Twitter. I'm being honest with you, you know, and I don't want to be worried that you'll be upset by it. So that was my opinion, and hope you're not upset by it. I'm going to put a video in with AlexEnterprises, The Existential Horror of Blam. Even though I'll admit I don't have too much to say about this one detail-wise. There are some times where I watch an anime YouTube video and I'm like, cool, or I didn't get it, or there's something about it that I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting, or nothing to say. And it's kind of similar with this one. There was a lot of moments where the way he writes it I kind of gloss over it, and I don't want to make any assumptions of like there's no descriptive language or whatever, or something missing, or what went wrong, or I don't know. It just didn't. I can't explain the deal with it. One thing I did notice though, kind of towards the end, or three quarters of the way through, is how much similarities there are to Super Eye Patch Wolf's content. This is a very Super Eye Patch Wolf type title. Subject matter, I would imagine him talking about Blam at some point. He hasn't talked about it already, but it seems like something he'd probably talk about at some point. The way he edits it, which like the manga panels, sometimes there's kind of nice editing with kind of like blurring the back and showing one panel, or just taking the full spreads and kind of moving the camera around with them. And often interjecting with anime clips and kind of making kind of a decent mix of both of them, which I think iPad 12 often does when he's talking about mixed media. Even down to like the text choice and the way he puts like a picture and the person's name in that white Debas, I think is the name of the font. But it's like almost the same font, and sometimes he does that thing when it's like two halves and it's things move to moving like that, and the very clear influence. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, fair. Although one thing I think I can say pretty definitively is that I was taken aback by your ending. Just the fact that it ends very abruptly. How the audience is made to feel about certain moments in Blam, and how that becomes a reflection. It turns out to be how the main character feels, and then you make the last sentence like so the audience is the main character, something along those lines. And just the way it ended, it just stopped. It didn't feel like a conclusion to me. It just felt like that was your thought and you didn't have anything else to say, and then it was just done. I think it's easy to kind of fall into this, but to do this sometimes because you really don't have anything else to say, and that was your point. And but you kind of have to take it as an experience you're giving the audience, and as a roller coaster, I guess. You have to think about the ending, right? And maybe it was supposed to be left kind of hanging, or but it's tough to determine that, I guess. I would just say that felt a little abrupt for me. That's all I can say about it, though. I think it's a decent video. I don't so I thought it'd be something, and go check it out. And last, this is sort of on the border. I certainly had no problems with it, really, but I maybe besides being how short it was, I guess. But Unknown Otaku has another This Week in Anitube video, so we're doing the back and forth. I didn't know that duo quit anime YouTube, and I'm like, cool, dude. Talk about video games, fine. I might still cover them if you put out a video game video, or maybe he made a different channel, and that's why I haven't seen him upload anything. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that's what Duo was doing at the beginning of his career, and then he moved to anime, and it got him more views and more attention, and then he didn't find anything else to say about Death Note, so moved on. And I'm like, okay, bye, I guess. Why goodbye though? Because you could still watch the guy's content, and like and I don't actually mention Monkey came back after saying he was done with anime videos. They're not anime It's anime, haha. Thomas the Tank Engine, haha. I don't know. And I mean, it's funny, I guess. But the idea of being goodbye to a content creator that's just gonna do different content, it's not really a goodbye or anything. I don't know. That was kind of weird to me. I liked his discussion with Next Taku's fairy tale video, and he has this one moment that was like, I was waiting for when you got to this one character, and I thought you were going to mention this one thing that I like about the character, or it may have been something else, but he makes a point of like, oh, but you didn't talk about that aspect, which I was happy about because now I get to talk about that aspect, and kind of laughs to himself. And I'm like, fucking relatable, dude. Fucking relatable. Because like, I'm sure other content creators do this. Like they don't want to make a video someone else already made. Or if they do, they want to make improvements or something. But they don't, if there isn't anything to improve or add to it, they don't want to make that video. So as content creators, all of us usually, I'm sure all of us have done this before, where we just like go, like YouTube search, like, okay, who's talked about this and stuff, and you see someone like, oh no, are they going to mention the thing I was going to talk about as a whole video, and they're like, oh good, I can still make it. I relate to that a lot, so it was good for you. I enjoyed that part, and the length of the video, even though I'm a little disappointed with it because I like this sort of long things, it's like this really felt like things that you found. You cited this one Twitter moment that was just like, it didn't have anything to do with anime YouTube. It was just like a bunch of people changed their anime avatar, their Twitter avatar to the Shiro from Fate Stay Night, and a bunch of people did that, and it was like, why is everyone doing it? It was just like kind of a funny moment on Twitter, and I like that you mentioned that, because like a lot of the reason I'm doing this is so that I can document my thoughts and feelings on these things, and as it evolves over time. And so it's a way to crystallize these moments, and your willingness to just talk about something you found funny, like this one interaction you had, or something you oversaw or whatever. That's really cool. And and the fact that it's so short, it's really distilling it to the things you cared about and that you found really cool, really funny. And I like that a ton. So I really like where you're going with it, and especially in being such a different direction to mine. So I really enjoyed that. Good job. All right. It's time for the best videos of the week. Yeah! Good videos! That was right. There's 3 of them. And the first one is from Rags. Good job, man. Isekai has become its own meme. So Rags is a pretty small creator. Not like trying to make any big moves or anything like that. And he kind of he's in Roger's server a lot. And he reminds me a lot of Roger in so that he comes off as somebody who's really just expressing himself and his personal experience without the whole air of sophistication or like superiority of another of some command of, we know what we're talking about kind of deal. He comes off very modest, and coming from his experience of like, when I was a kid, the isekai stories that I was going through were pretty straightforward, and they didn't have this genre to them that was like, had a bunch of tropes and stuff that was established. Like, he makes a great point of how the act of going to another world is kind of become a punchline or a joke or even a premise. It's just like, this was how, like, this is like, it's part of the premise. And he makes a really good connection to Kyokara Mao as like, yeah, this show actually has a lot of the stuff that became the tropes. It wasn't necessarily like a popular show, and he makes a point that like very few people have heard or talk about it. And I have heard of Familiar of Zero is also a very similar case of kind of a contemporary isekai. But I think Kyokara Mao is an even better example, from what I can tell. I'm not too versed in it, to be honest. I know Kyokara Mao a bit, but I don't know much about Familiar of Zero. He doesn't really mention it either. But he points out all these things that are like common tropes, and then they're even aping on each other or trying to like outdo each other in terms of their ridiculousness. And then he does that whole traditional like kind of shitting on the concept of a show. Like he mentions one of them that I hadn't heard of, where It's an isekai where the protagonist levels up for every step he takes. So at 10,000 steps, he'd be level 10,000, and that's actually the title. Like, if I take 10,000 steps, I'll be level 10,000 or whatever. He makes that specific point. And he's like, that's so stupid, and makes those kind of slanderous without giving this isekai a chance, like how Getting the Robot was. But it came from a more place of like, that's so weird, or just as someone who was consuming isekai in the past and a lot of these previous titles that were taking themselves fairly seriously, such as Dot Hack, such as Escaflowne, or Now and Then Here and There, that weren't trying to be memes, you know what I mean? And I think it made a lot of sense, and the memification of this genre and how it's kind of spiraling out of Ouroboros saying, or just kind of spiraling into it. And it was coming from a perspective that was very observant and kind of poking fun at itself a little bit with like being like kind of a trashy video. I could be, I'm not sensitive to self-deprecating humor, but really I think that it's so often that the self-deprecating humor comes to the detriment of series or videos. But for some reason, this wasn't too bad, especially just because I think the editing is particularly slapshot. There's a lot of things that like disappear at like kind of awkward random times, and as someone who's made videos, that this sort of things happen that are unintentional. But he leaves all that stuff in, or perhaps does it on purpose, as a way to make it kind of slapshot and like putting this stuff out and not trying to make like a sophisticated, airtight kind of video, something like I would make or try to make. But that unabashed like approach and the method and the way he goes about this topic, I just enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool. Zeria gets a nice A from me with this why Japanese cyberpunk is different. So she's definitely become so much more verbose in her scripts and like analytical, to where like, oh man, I can't wait to read her prose, like the novel she's writing, because the writing here is so dense, and it reminded me of Joe actually with Pause and Select, with like kind of big words, and like it doesn't cite as much. She also does cite other things and like other academic texts, and getting a real concrete idea of cyberpunk. And I liked that it was very narrow in scope, in terms like concentrated. It was Akira, Bubblegum Crisis, and Ghost in the Shell. In those particularly, and she draws a lot of inspiration of how like Blade Runner is the one that really started it, kind of the impetus. And then I like that observation of from like it peters out in the 2000s, where like it just kind of, they stopped getting it. Like a lot of the appeal of cyberpunk is the idea that the creators couldn't predict what would happen in the future, and there's stuff that could be way beyond our wildest nightmares, and tackling really obtuse or like really profound subject matters. But you can't necessarily write that today, because we all are aware of what the future did bring us, which is social media and surveillance and some of this other stuff. Although, some could argue, how much of that did 1984 predict? Which is not cyberpunk, but like, I don't know, there's other factors to it that I thought it was a little broader. But what the connection she did make was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Yeah, there was just so many points that she was making, like what is the depiction of the government or the police in each of these works, and she kind of goes through like how they each tackle it a little bit differently, but generally how much Japanese media tackled it versus as the title implies, I guess. I really liked it, and it was coming from. She was kind of handling the whole with Flip Flappers. It really, I don't know when it started, but like, or maybe it was really there the whole time and I just never noticed, but her writing is incredibly dense and verbose, and sometimes kind of hard to follow. I still found it kind of hard to follow with like, similar to Flip Flap's video. But that's the sort of thing that I still admire it, and I still think it's a good overall. So I genuinely really enjoyed that. Sorry, I don't have as you know. It's best to be in the decent category because then I have very pointed criticisms that are interesting. You know, that make you improve idea or something about him. But then when it's best, I was like, I liked it. So yeah, I'm sorry, but I enjoyed it. It was good. Good job. And last, this was the video that I genuinely was taken back. Like, wow, that was great. Hell yeah. It was this KorewaEden video. No one understands Assassin's Pride. I did tell him this. The title's kind of a meme. The next talk, because like I think Otaku kind of made this his brand before he made Flexus his brand. So I guess KorewaEden is just kind of adopting it as the Otaku's abandoned son. But it actually had kind of a narrative that was similar to Manmode's Gridman video, which like that's some potent shit. And Eden was able to tap into that very similarly and just had so much humor to it that like, and there's this is two episodes out and he made, it's a lampshading joke, but it is it's more of a transparent, like he knows, like he's like, yeah, okay. You know, like I would probably I was making this up. I was like, yeah, but it's only 2 episodes in. And he's like, guys, there's a whopping 2 episodes to this show. Like, that's double the entertainment. And I was like, oh, that's good. That's funny. Yeah, man. But yeah, back to this, he was kind of channeling man mode here with, because he hated the show and he was like, I've been dishonest at this point. I dropped this show. And like everyone, he was like, kind of shitting. And I was like, everyone is bad-mouthing this show. And then, you know, and he starts talking about, at first, I thought it was, like, kind of hypocritical to start with, like, oh, this shit, taking it down several pegs. But it was actually really integral to what he was talking about of his experience of, like, yeah, I dropped this. But the OP was just so catchy. And I kept listening to it. It was my new addiction. And I'm like, wow, that is fucking relatable, dude. So, like, Black Clover, I'm currently watching Black Clover. I'm 100 episodes in, and I started it because of the OP. I didn't drop it like you dropped the show and then came back to it. But like I wasn't initially gonna watch Black Clover because I was like, long running shonen? No! I know this is gonna go more than 50 episodes. You can't make me. And then I listened to the OP and we're like, oh shit, this slaps, dude. Yeah, baby. And that idea of looking into the lyrics and you're like, wait a minute. There's something here. And then and it's like, but then I thought, the world has all this stuff to it, and you were like, huh, wait a minute, there's something to this, isn't there? And he makes this really, this is the best point, and probably my favorite one of the week, where he's just like, I put on my cringe suit and went in knowing that he might not like it and willing to accept things that he doesn't like. And he makes this great point, or maybe I'm putting words in his mouth, but like how people just find stuff mediocre and then they don't give it another chance because they don't want to spend time on something they don't think is perfect or something they don't thoroughly enjoy, you know? And so like that applies to so much shit, dude. And it's such a success story for me where it's like, you know, for Gintama, right? I could have dropped that show so many times. I felt like dropping it a lot. But I was happy I didn't because I was able to have a fully developed opinion about it and see where the show was going. And I'm like, oh, that is really interesting. And getting it in that way. And then experiencing this greatness, which, you know, I only thought a couple of them were really great, to be honest. But some of them were pretty riveting. Some of the arcs, the serious arcs that are in Gintama that people just flaunt as some of the best shit ever. But it's worth kind of trudging through, even though you personally don't like that. You don't even have to justify it. You don't have to say that you like these parts. Like, oh man, like Eden is so willing to say, no, this is doo-doo. Like some of this stuff is not great. But then like really, it's like I was really satisfied when this one character who was kind of a bitch got her ass handed to her, and it's like that shit's so satisfying. And I'm like, yeah, isn't it? Or I don't know. I was just so on board with this idea of giving shows a chance to express themselves. and finding enjoyment out of it and that kind of redemption stuff. It just hit me in the fucking right spot, dude. This was awesome. And he comes up with the same like humor that he had that I think was better than Demo D. It didn't remind me of Demolition D. I gotta tell you. You surpassed him for me in this instance. This was sick. Fucking good shit, dude. And I think that will just about do it for this episode of Anitube Digest. Thank you for watching. Have a good week. Yo, peace.